Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we're talking about The Apartment, which we saw last night at an almost completely packed out Electric Cinema. So what we were talking about with them showing old movies, classics, good choices to bring people in, seems to be working. It's also, I mean, they're showing The Elephant Man on Sunday and I looked for tickets for that. That's almost completely gone.
Yes.
So it seems to be working for them, which is good. It was great to see it with a really packed out, excited audience.
It was a sold out screening.
The film got good laughs.
Yes. I think the audience was with it, every step of the way. I did feel like applauding at the end, and nobody did.
I did wonder whether people would. I'd never seen it before. No. And Billy Wilder is one of these directors who it constantly feels like I need to know better. I mean, I have seen a few of his films by this point. I've seen Sunset Boulevard, we saw Fedora together for the podcast.
Yes.
I've seen Double Indemnity, again, we saw that for the podcast.
Yes, with Fred McMurray again.
Must be one or two others, but he's made a lot of films that I haven't seen and that are considered classics, and this is one of them.
Yes.
I did come out feeling a little bit sort of... It's weird. The whole film I enjoyed. The whole way through. I liked how it looked. I liked the play between the characters. I liked the script. All of it. It's really nice. And then I came out feeling, why am I feeling a bit bereft? I didn't really get it. It might have partly been that because we didn't get the sofa seats at the Electric. Yeah.
I did try.
Yeah, you did try. I'm not blaming you. But I love the sofa seats and they're really nice and comfortable. And the reason I like it is not just because they are good, but it's also because the regular seats make my arse fall so deeply asleep. I feel so uncomfortable. I may have had something to do with it. And I did put on Facebook later, I just put The Apartment is too long. And I did kind of want to try and wind people up a bit with that because I knew that people would come out the woodwork telling me I was wrong. And indeed they did.
Yes.
And I said, you guys are just hacks. But I don't think I'm entirely wrong. I did think it was a little bit long. And I do think that there's an element... The two elements of comedy and drama don't quite balance well.
Oh, I think they do.
But go on.
I think they do, and I think almost like the opposite of you, really. Because I think, what would you cut out? I wouldn't cut anything out. Everything is necessary. And unlike Belfast, which we've just talked about earlier, I think this is one of those films that gets richer the more you think about it, really. So kind of after you left, something that I hadn't thought about, because this is one of those films that I've seen on television as a child, right? And I hadn't seen it since. And, what you remember is Jack Lemmon, kind of being sweet and put upon, right? And Shirley MacLaine being kooky and attractive, though she's not too kooky in this, actually. But thinking about it, what I thought, this is a really scathing critique of America, of American corporate culture, of relations. Like, if you think it's 1960, it's the US at its prime, right? Where, the work hard ethic, you work hard, you'll be a success and all that. And this shows the opposite. It's who who you butter up. Like, kind of how you allow yourself to get used, that kind of makes you run up the greasy pole. And everybody's lying, cheating, using, right? Except our protagonists, right? Yeah. And particularly the Shirley MacLaine character, who's the only one who's really, like, innocent. Yeah, she is kind of completely in love, and does things because she's in love, right?
I think, generally speaking, the women are seen as innocents. I think actually this thing about takers versus those who get took, and all the takers are the executive men.
They are, but some of the women, you get a sense that switchboard blonde, right, is also kind of out for what she can get. A little bit of fun and a drink and, kind of maybe a purse from Bergdorf's, right? Like, so it's not all of the women who are... I mean, they are all put upon, and actually one of the things that you see very clearly is like the gender differences, the opportunities women have and the roles that, they're allowed to play. But that doesn't make them all innocent either.
Well, let's briefly say what it's about, because I, in fact, didn't know what it was about. I knew it was about an apartment, but I didn't know what happened in it. So Jack Lemmon works at this corporate building. It's, you know, in the long office that we see goes on for miles and miles and miles of just identikit, just desks and typewriters and so on. And he has an apartment in New York, but he doesn't get to sleep in it all the time because it turns out that he's lending it out. He's not even renting it out, I don't think. He's lending it out to these executives who work above him to use as a pied-à-terre for their sans-culottes, as the French would say.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that the film is so wonderful at is also showing you how that developed, because it wasn't that Jack Lemmon decided to let his apartment so that executives could use it as a place to fuck in between 5 and 7. I mean, you know, one guy needed to change his clothes to go to a banquet and said, "Oh, well, use my apartment." And before you know it, kind of all these executives were now using his apartment, right?
Yeah. And indeed, it's not just between 5 and 7, right? This keeps him out of the apartment when he needs to be using it, when he needs to sleep. Oh. And he's constantly he has a book of appointments. He's moving things around. Quite a funny scene early on where someone's, you know, whatever, he has a cold, so I need the apartment for tonight. Yeah. So he has to move a date, then he has to get someone else to move a date, someone else to move a date. And it seems like it's quite a lot of people then. What we actually learn then is that it's just these 4 executives, but he's very put upon by them.
Yes.
And there is this talk about Fred McMurray runs the company, and when he learns of this, he wants in on it. You know, and then it becomes talk of, well, there's promotion involved. If you scratch my back and so on, I'll scratch yours. And Jack Lemmon also is interested in the elevator girl, played by Shirley MacLaine.
Yes. Miss Cuban.
And I'm say interested in, like, it's not as seedy as the guys are, you know, he likes her, right? He wants to find a human connection. And that's, I think, part of the thing, part of the worry about corporate culture there is in this film, I was thinking about the same thing, is that it's alienating. It's not quite depersonalising, but there's definitely a focus on what people's roles are. The elevator girl, the executives, the middle management. People are kind of labelled, you know, the switchboard girls.
And they're all kind of anonymous. You see this row upon row upon row of people doing the same job.
And there's a big difference drawn between the architecture of the office and the architecture of the home, which is kind of, you know, the office is regimented, regulated, it stretches off into the distance, everyone's the same. And the apartment is cluttered and it's not quite small. I mean, it's one of those things where it's a New York apartment, but still it's kind of big.
It's quite small.
But it's kind of cluttered and a little bit cramped and homely. And so
you see one bedroom, a teeny kitchen, and a living room that's not that big. I mean, you know, and actually one of the things that I think this is also a critique of American culture is because you have this middle-class executive, university-educated accountant, you know, and a doctor, you know, who's his next door neighbor, living in this super grungy apartment. And actually you see the grunge, you see the walls, and it's where you would expect poor people to live in, right? Like, you know, if that were like Montreal, I would expect that's, you know, an apartment for poor people. Obviously the location is a prime location, but nonetheless, these are like people who should be having a middle class, upper middle class life, and are living in this tiny, grungy apartments, which is in itself, I think, a kind of a critique of, you know, American, you know, what America advertised to the world as its own lifestyle.
The film made me think about Shop Around the Corner.
Ah, how unusual.
Because it occurred to me that in Shop Around the Corner, Lubitsch, your favourite.
Yes.
We hardly see anybody's dwelling. I think maybe we see the bosses one point for Christmas dinner.
No, you don't. You see the Margaret Sullivan's character's house.
Right.
Yeah, when she's ill and James Stewart goes to visit her.
Right, but that's it. It's all in the shop, and the shop is a community. And in here, there is no community at work, right? You know, there is none of that. Whereas the home actually is. There is a formal community there, particularly with the next door neighbours.
Yes, I mean, here there are relations of exchange and use that you see in the apartment. Yeah, but not a community the way that you see in Shop Around the Corner.
Yeah, and the executives who use the apartment aren't a community, they're a cabal, right? And, you know, I talked about the difference between the takers and those who get took, as the film puts it, as Shirley MacLaine's character puts it. And that's one distinction, but I think the more interesting distinction is between the takers and the mensches. The next door neighbour's always saying, be a mensch. And being a mensch, you know, a mensch means a good human, a caring human, that kind of thing.
I thought they mistranslated in the film, because I always thought, you know, they translate mensch as human, whereas I always translate mensch, you know, as a good or lovely person, not just a person or a human, but a good one.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's not quite how it's phrased in the film when they explain it in English. I also associate it with something that men are called mensches, and I don't think I've ever heard a woman called a mensch. Not that comes up in the film exactly, but I'm using the film's kind of version of what it's saying a mensch is, right? And basically, this is Jack Lemmon's choice in the film. Is he going to be a taker or is he going to be a mensch? And that's the choice that he rejects. That's the choice that he makes at the end when he's been given this offer. He moves up the corporate hierarchy, and eventually he's been offered this office next to who's the guy, Fred McMurray, who runs the company, in this kind of, it's a little bit of a closet, but I guess it's an office next to the boss. And the thing is, I had your spare key, but I threw it away because I was going to get caught. I need your key. And this is the choice that he makes, is do I give him the key to the apartment again? Do I cement this promotion? Do I climb the corporate ladder? Do I become one of the, or not maybe become one of the taker class because he would still be getting used by them, but do I collaborate with the taker class? And he chooses not to. He rejects it. He gives him his key to his office back, or the key to the executive washroom, rather.
That's right.
And he embraces becoming a mensch.
Well, he embraces her. I mean, he's doing it for her.
But that's what proves it, right? Like that I think the choice is the choice that's made, and then that's what then shows her when she discovers this, because she's having the affair with Fred McMurray. She loves him, and then when he explains that this is what Jack Lemmon did, that's when she realises this is the man I love. Yeah, so that's what proves it to her. Well, I think it's great. I think it's great. It's really, really nicely worked through, and it's very complex and very nice. The thing that I felt was unbalanced was the film is structured around this suicide attempt of Shirley MacLaine's when she thinks that she's lost Fred McMurray because he's gone back to his wife and family.
It's not because he's gone back to his wife and family. It's because he's treated her like a hooker.
Yes. But he also goes back, doesn't he?
Well, yes, but
yes,
her thing is, I'm in love with this guy, and I've made all these excuses for him and whatever, and he's just treated me like a hooker.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And actually a cheap hooker, because, kind of, they've had sex so often, and he's given her £100, which really, she's a bargain. If that's the way he thinks of her,
yes,
then, not only a cheap hooker. And that's what destroys her.
So she has this suicide attempt. She takes loads and loads of pills, and obviously they discover her. They're able to save her, and then there's this time spent in the apartment recuperating when she develops a relationship and a bond with Jack Lemmon. But then the film, I think quite earnestly, but to me it fails at this, builds up towards a potential second suicide attempt, which is Jack Lemmon's. So structurally it's the same. He thinks he's lost the girl. Because she's gone back off Fred McMurray. He discovered, I forget exactly what it was, but that he thinks he's lost her, right?
Also, he'd done it before.
Yeah, there's this thing about he's had a suicide attempt before, which he describes to her, and there's all this talk, quite separately, but it's there, about people try this more than once. You need to look after her. So you expected to put these two things together. His suicide attempt was with a gun, and we see this gun in his apartment while he's packing up, and there's a shot, he looks at it, right? He notices his gun, he puts it away, we notice it too. And then we get this gunshot when she's coming back to the apartment. Sounds like a gunshot. And ultimately we find actually he's opened a bottle of champagne.
I thought that was clever.
See, the thing is, I can understand how it's trying to put all that together, but the reason I didn't buy it I didn't buy any tension in it. I didn't think at all. I mean, partly it's the genre. I didn't think there was possibility that he was gonna try and kill himself. I just thought it's the genre. It's not going to happen. There'll be a happy ending. So maybe that's part of it. Part of it is that he's chipper the whole way through. Even when he's telling the story about his suicide attempt, it's a little bit light-hearted.
No, I mean, I think the thing about Jack Lemmon, which I think, he's one of the great film actors of the 20th century, is that, even when he's being funny, it has an undertow of sadness. Yeah. It's a very sad story. He's talking about how he's such a schnook, that he was going to commit suicide, and instead he just kind of hit his leg with a gun, right? And he's trying to make it funny, right? But there's a kind of undertow of desperation or of sadness to the whole thing. Yeah.
I can see how you would see it there, and I definitely agree this is one of Jack Lemmon's strengths as an actor, but I didn't feel the film carried it off it. It felt too light-hearted a story. I didn't buy the drama of it, and I didn't buy it as a way to build attention. I did think it was all a little bit half-hearted, all of that, which means that ultimate... The tension that it's trying to build towards at the end didn't work for me at all.
Well, I was very moved by it, and actually, surprisingly so. I found it very moving, because it has to be one of the darkest, most cynical comedies, really. Yeah, like it's very dark. And it's quite cynical.
Well, I mean, I felt it had elements of noir.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there is a certain kind of seedy underbelly thing going on, and it does have this talk of suicide, and the shots as well, where he hangs around hiding in the shadows while people come in and out of his apartment because he shouldn't be seen there. You know, they had a noirish feel, that hiding in the shadows.
Well, also, it speaks of a kind of a self-loathing, yes, and a kind of a lack of self-esteem, and that frantic desire to please that the powerless have. But all of that communicated to me, really. And, you were talking earlier about The Office, and saying, like, how small. But I think the film is so wonderful about how it creates this barrier between the people working in the open, which seems infinite and anonymous, and the relatively protected space of the office, right? Like, which all seem to have these amazing views of the canyons of New York, right? And I thought that was particularly evident in The Party, like, the difference between the inside and the outside of the office, and how cleverly that was used, that the office were like a bit of a protective space. I remember that moment where, he comes into the office and he kicks the couple who are like, but there's all this frantic activity happening on the outside, right? So I think, there are 4 or 5 different spaces in the film. There's the inside of the office and the outside of the office at work. Yeah, there's the lobby, there's the nightclub, and then there's the apartment, and then outside on the street. And it does, all of that creates a kind of a noir, feel, like, kind of the nightclub, and being the last people, kind of at the club before it closes, hooks up with the wife of a criminal who's in jail in Cuba. Yeah, all of it is really quite dark. Yeah. And unlike Lubitsch, because you see, I think Lubitsch, what I love about him is he's so into fun and pleasure and forgiveness. Yeah, kind of people are complex and they make mistakes, but they're basically good, really. Whereas I think Billy Wilder's take on people is that they're all horrible, right? I mean, I think there is a thing about, because Billy Wilder thought Lubitsch was the greatest filmmaker ever. And he had this sign on his desk, like, how would Lubitsch do it? So when he was writing his screenplays, it was always, how would Lubitsch do it? And of course, he could never do it like the way that Lubitsch would do it, because the Holocaust happened in between. Yeah, kind of, most of Lubitsch's films, were made like pre-Holocaust. Some of them, so the Nazis came in 1933, he died in 1946 or something like that, right? And obviously, like, he grew up in a Jewish neighborhood in Berlin and was very familiar with all kinds of anti-Semitism. But there was a kind of a lightness and acceptance and so on that Lubitsch had that was impossible for Billy Wilder. Because Billy Wilder, I think almost all his family was wiped out in concentration camps, right? So, and he was like, the lucky one who happened to be in America. But, I mean, he actually fled from Berlin to Paris, worked in Paris. So, like, he really fled the Nazis. And then, on top of that, was witness to the disasters, because I think he was in Germany in the immediate... I'm not sure whether he was one of the people who, liberated Germany and liberated the camps, but if he wasn't, he appeared shortly thereafter. So his whole view of humanity was tainted by that. Well, tainted is the wrong word. Was informed by that. And his films are very dark and very bleak and very cynical, and you see that, I think, in The Apartment,
Yes, and it seems... Didn't he make 3 films in which insurance was a kind of... I mean, Double Indemnity
is one.
I think there's one after this as well, where an insurance guy was a main character or something like that.
I don't know.
There's something quite cynical about the insurance world as well. It's the way it's kind of...
Insurance is a bit cynical as well, because it's all about the odds.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not about morality, it's just about the odds.
Yeah, and Double Indemnity certainly is about how you can play that, That's not how it's done here. But I think, he could... The film could be about any business, and it's about the insurance business. And there's something in there. But you're right. Like, but the world in which his characters live is a cynical one, or at least it's populated by cynical people.
Yes.
But he does find the two people in this world who aren't cynical, who are looking for a human connection, and he lets them find it at the end.
Two vulnerable, weak people. Yeah, I mean, you know, she's a working class girl. He's like, you know, an educated, every guy. The really good people are actually the doctor and his wife.
Yeah.
You know, so they are genuinely good. The Shirley MacLaine character and the Jack Lemmon character are people who want to be good, but who are kind of weak-willed or snooky. Right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what's so nice about the film, that you know, they're kind of redeemed by meeting each other, by falling in love, by caring for something that's not just themselves. And that's what, you know, separates them, you know, both from the corporate culture that they're a part of, which is entirely cynical, and, you know, the neighboring doctor and his wife, who are just genuinely good people. Yeah. They're kind of like in between. They're more like every person.
Yeah.
Which is what makes the film so great to me.
Yeah. And I like that. I mean, it made me think of Mad Men as well, because it's basically Mad Men is about this time in history, about this place in the world, and about men using women left, right, and centre, all the women in their office. You know, and you know, it's easy enough to do that today, looking back and going, weren't they sexist? But to do it at the time, in a world in which, as you were saying, this is like the height of American corporate culture. This was America was winning, and this is what we should all be doing.
They just won the war. They were really at the height of their powers and prosperity, and also an idea that people believed in.
Yeah.
You know, kind of the American way of life. And this shows the really dark side of it, or a very dark side of it.
Yeah. At the time. Which
and at the top. Yeah, because, I mean, it's one thing to show the dark side of it if you're making a gangster film, but this is about corporate America.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. This is about the good guys.
Yeah.
Except they're not.
Yeah. Exactly. Which, you know, is one of the things that the film does so well, really. And I think the other thing that I find Billy Wilder so great at is really with the actors. I mean, Jack Lemmon is a great actor, but he's so inventive, right? Like, you know, he gets laughs out of props, expressions. He doubles things, you know, so that at his most desperate, he's at his funniest, right? And then when he's trying to be funny and charming, he always evokes a kind of a desperation, right?
I was really taken by Shirley MacLaine.
Oh, she's wonderful.
I'm not sure that I've seen her in anything before, though I am familiar with her as a personality, as a person, from Parkinson and things, particularly. She was on Parkinson quite a few times. I found out she's really, really lovely, personable, such a likeable presence in this film. I understand everything that she thinks and everything that she's doing, and the way in which she's negotiating the world she lives in. I find her really emotionally open, transparent, the word you'd like to use.
Yes.
I loved her to bits. So she was wonderful.
She is. I mean, I think my view of her is coloured because I think in the last 20 years or more, you know, she has basically been playing every character in the same way. Right, so I don't know if you've ever seen Steel Magnolias.
No.
But she plays this crotchety, grouchy, unkind, kind of cynical, you know, person called Weezer. And it seems every character she's played after that is that kind of cynical, you know, grouchy, person who knows better than anybody else and is angry at the world kind of vibe, which is so the opposite of what she shows in this film. And you forget, that, you know, there are other Shirley MacLaines than this grouchy old one.
Yeah. I suppose the film also slightly reminded me of Frank Capra. I mean, well, particularly thinking of It's a Wonderful Life and, you know, the badness of the guy at the top or whatever, and the community of people who...
No, this is to me the opposite of Capra.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's like, you know, I'm not saying that. But I think there's something about the way that the ideals of the American community built up out of bits and pieces, scraps of people from all over the place. Like the thing, particularly when the guy comes in, the brother-in-law, and he's this cab driver, and he's violent and stuff, and it's a bit of a threat, but he's also there to protect his sister-in-law.
Yes.
And, you know, there was something, I don't know, it's a very vaguely put together thought, but that's kind of what I mean.
No. Well, yeah, that's...
As opposed to Mr. Potter, who's there using the apartments and all the women.
Yes. I think what's lovely about the film Inhuman is what Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine bring, which are there as written. It's not that they bring something that isn't there, though they add to it, right? Because they're so personable and also kind of ordinary. I mean, it's difficult to think of Shirley MacLaine as ordinary because, of course, she's got such an incredible body. Right, but at the time she was seen as kind of ordinary, yeah, like with the round face. She wasn't considered like a beauty, right? She was considered somebody very sexy and attractive and personable, but not like Elizabeth Taylor or Ava Gardner or other stars of that period. You know, she was considered like a female equivalent of every man, but also with an extraordinary body. She was a dancer. And you see that, you can see why, all the men would fall for her. The way that she walks. Or there's this bit where she, at the end, where she comes out of the elevator and she's wearing this kind of magnificent sweater, with this huge lapel. And just the way that she walks, she's very attractive. Though you forget also that Jack Lemmon in his own way was as well,
Well, you were saying before the film, like, he was never handsome, not like drop dead handsome.
Yes.
But it's like girl next door, boy next door sort of thing. Like
That's right.
They're believable, likeable, pretty-ish, pretty enough.
Yeah. I think so. Anyway, I thought it was a great film, and also that it grows on you, right? So, for example, some of the images that you get, Fred McMurray with his family and his boys, as he gets a phone call about his girlfriend's suicide, and his complete lack of emotional involvement with that, right? Like, so there's this, the home Christmas is the way that American Christmases should be. And yet what we're being told is, this is a lie. There's a woman at the end who just committed suicide at the other end of this phone. So, and the film is full of things like that, right? Like, and often visually, there are images that speak an alienation. I mean, that whole set.
Yeah.
So I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, I'd be interested to watch it a second time and to wonder whether I do still think it's too long. I think, and that was an honest assessment, and I do wonder whether I still think there are things. It's not that I would cut anything, but I wonder whether I still think there are things that could be tighter, more efficiently expressed and developed in the film. And I think part of it might be because some of the developments of the drama didn't really work for me, and so I kind of felt like it ended up being wasted time because it ended up feeling empty, So maybe there's that, but I did really like it.
I was very grateful to the Electric for putting a 35mm screening of it. I was so happy to see it in a place that was packed and to be responding to it with other people. I thought it was marvelous.
Yeah, and we first time we went to the Electric the other day, your man sat next to you and chatted to you, and here today, people on the other side we were having a bit of a chat with. It's actually a feeling of community going on there.
Yes.
Which is nice.
Yes. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies. And the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.